Welcome into Lee Company's Countdown to Kickoff, preseason edition, the final preseason game for the Tennessee Titans as they are set to travel to New Orleans. They are there and going up against the Saints today alongside Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins. I'm Kalya Anderson. We'll check in with Buck Reising, who is in New Orleans in about 20 minutes. Again, this show always made possible by Lee Company. All you need, visit them online at leecompany.com. So here we are, you guys, the dress rehearsal. We're going to actually have a little bit to pick apart today because the starters are expected to play, majority of them, except for a few like Jeffrey Simmons, Chidobe Awuzie, Harold Landry, and L'Jarius Sneed. But other than that, we're going to see a lot of these starters. And Arden Key.
Yeah, he's injured, though. Right?
Exactly, because he hurt that hammy when he got pancaked, by the way, by J.C. Latham in practice the other day.
Was that what happened?
Yeah, I watched it firsthand.
Oh.
Yeah. And
he got pancaked.
He got pancaked by Latham in one-on-ones, and then he, grabbed his hammy and went and kind of kneeled down. And I was like, that does not look good.
Oh, man.
And then sure enough.
Has that ever happened, B-Hop, when you pancake somebody, they didn't acted like they hurt their hamstring? I'm just saying, I said that's what happened with
It was embarrassing.
But something happened where it was a knee, ankle, you like, what happened?
What happened to you?
Right. Oh, did you say, oh, my bad?
No, well, the thing, it depended if I intended to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was I pancaking you, putting syrup on you?
Oh.
No! Or was it was unintended. You know what I'm saying? You might have lost your footing and I fell on top of you.
Right. That's how I get that.
I'll tell you,
We've
guys.
all been there, done that. I've definitely been pancaked
because it was
sure.
embarrassing.
It's
Samari and Terry
especially
watch
in
it.
practice. It's one thing in the game, and you ain't got the tape.
How about that? How about this? In that situation, I got pancaked. Kevin Carter pancaked me
really?
in one-on-ones.
Oh, yeah.
Came straight down the middle, man. You know how big Kevin was. Kevin's like 6'7", 300 pounds. He's bigger than I am.
You just get off and kind of
I was just on my heels. You know how you get on your heels sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
And
it's not a good feeling when you get pancaked. I don't care where you're at. It's like, oh, man. This is going to be all over the whole league.
Right?
If it happens in a game, it's not.
Oh, my God. You know what?
It's not cool. It is not cool, man. I'm telling you. I get behind.
Charles Haley, he did that to me in Texas Stadium.
Oh, when you
in 1994, we played the Cowboys.
During a game?
I'm telling you what, the first thing I thought about was my mom, Kayla. I said, oh my God, my mom saw this. She just saw me get put on my butt. I'm a grown man. You're talking about, he hit me square in the chest, Blaine.
You went prepared for the bull rush.
Are you kidding me? I didn't know what that maniac was doing out there. And he hit me right in the face and knocked me on my back. I was like, oh my God.
Was
First thing I thought about was Rosalind.
That lingered?
Say again?
Was there a video that lingered of it, or did it go away?
I don't even know that.
What did the guys say in the meeting room when you with your guys? Because they usually kind of poke you a little bit, like, "Hey, what happened there, bro?"
You know how that works, Blaine. It is your responsibility to let the rest of the unit know that you have a play like that coming up in film.
No doubt.
So you can get the popcorn. Like, oh my God, they're gonna have a laugh at your expense. That's for real.
Oh man.
Well, we do get to see the starters play, you guys. I'm curious as when you did your preseason games, and I know there was a lot more that was put into that. At that point, you guys as starters, I think, played a little bit more than they do nowadays. What can we get out of a quote-unquote dress rehearsal today? I think they're supposed to play up to about 3 series.
Well, I think you just want accuracy and execution. You don't have to think about that for a second, how I wanted to coin that. Because they're not working on anything specific. They're not getting into anything sophisticated. They're not trying to give Chicago and New York any sort of indications of what they're going to be doing, right?
Right.
Now, I will say they probably have been working on a few things, a few wrinkles, if you will, for Caleb Williams, kind of sprinkling it here and there, and vice versa on the offense. But for the most part, you want to just kind of make sure you can go through those steps that would prepare you for the first regular season game, which will be on the road in Chicago, much like they're doing in New Orleans now. So it's a good opportunity for them to kind of go through their checks and balances, the process on the road, flying to a different location, right? Staying in a hotel, getting used to that environment. So that way, next week on September 8th, you're ready to go, because that's exactly what, all of this has prepared you for. And what's also interesting, and Blaine will touch on this a little bit too, the room shrinks. After this week, or after, in just a few days or so.
Next week.
Once the cuts happen, there's a lot more empty seats. It's a lot more intimate. You look around the room and you're saying, these are the dudes I'm going to war with. For 18 weeks, it's going to be us riding out. Some things may happen, come and go, but for the most part, this is the foundation of 2024's team.
Right.
And it's almost like you can kind of look around and give each other a hug almost like, y'all, we made it. You know what I mean? Now, some of them are more obvious than others, but like Blaine, when he made the roster, think about that. He's hedging that he's going to get cut. That's why he just said, hey, might as throw my stuff in your garage while I, see what these Titans or these Oilers do. Nah, but then guess what? At the end of the day, when all the cuts were made, that dude made it.
Yeah.
So there had to be a sense of accomplishment, a feeling of belonging. You know what I mean? So kind of like a brotherhood is founded right in that moment.
How'd you find out, by the way? Say what you're saying, but I'm interested in what that was like.
Well, as far as the cut down day, you think you got the final three, then there's always a couple more changes the next week.
That's true.
Really, that was the surprising part after you're in the league that, it's like, oh, dang, they still churning the back end of the roster if they find somebody else better. So that's really, heartbreaking and wrenching because you think these are the guys, and that's why you always kind of have to make sure that this is mostly the guy, but we don't know yet. But as far as I was concerned, once John McClain wrote an article that everybody better start knowing who Blaine Bishop is, that was before last cuts that this guy's playing. I'm sure he talked to the coaches and everything else. So, that kind of wasn't, the case once I knew probably a couple of weeks before that. Sure. I got a little nervous. A lot of things happened my rookie year in that I got injured. Mm-hmm. I got injured in the second preseason game. I got ear-holed. We were just talking about pancaked. I got ear-holed. I was running down on kickoff. I'm going to be the first one down there. I'm going to make a play, man. I'm going to bust somebody up. And boy, did I get busted up. I got ear-holed. They did this cross block. I did not even see the guy, and he ear-holed me, and I sprained my MCL. So I didn't even play the last two preseason games, and I was, I was like, I was trying to rush and try to get healthy, but I couldn't cut or anything. It was like, Blaine, don't worry about it. We got you. You're fine here. So so I probably knew a couple weeks before that. But it is a stressful time. I think the things that I'm looking for in this last preseason game now that is set up with 3 games is I wrote down. You base it off as a coach, you're looking at the last game, less penalties. We had the false starts, and some of it was Malik Willis, some of it was the offensive line, some of it was the defense drawing them off. You could go where you want to, but you want to try to have a smooth, cadence as well as operations, as B-Hop mentioned. But also, I want to see more explosive plays by the offense. Maybe that's Jackson, maybe that's somebody, but we got to see explosive plays because that's one thing we haven't had in the dynamic players that could take something and make a whole bunch of people miss and turn, a little short gain into a big one. So I want to see that. Try to escape this game with no injuries, by the way, because this is the last one.
Great point.
Regardless of who plays and who's not. And I think one thing is very clear to me is that the gap is closing between the back end of the roster and to the guys who are actually been in the league. So that shows they're doing a really good job of, churning the roster and having a better overall roster just in talent alone. Mm-hmm. Still has a little bit to go, but, the gap is getting closer and closer to see who. I mean, we got a lot of guys fighting for these last 2 or 3 spots in different position groups all over the place. And I'm interested to see how that all plays out, and then who handles the pressure of that. Do you try too hard and try to go outside the scheme of whatever you're asked to do on a play and try to be an individual player, or do you actually do your job even though you're not making plays? Good example of that last game is, did we ever talk about Lolly?
Gabe Judy Lolly.
Right. Did we talk about him? No, but guess what? Every play I watched him, he did his job.
Yep.
And see, that's what happens. And then you say, well, dang, this guy, he's going to be on this roster. So does that cost Trey Avery?
Right.
Does he fit their mold of what they're trying to do? So these are the things that the coaches, I think, are watching. And these guys going to get a little, bit of time. I mean, they're going to probably get at least a couple quarters to play. So a lot of desperation by players, see how they act and respond.
Yeah, Trey Avery understands exactly what that feels like because they're in that exact same position a couple of years ago when he came in.
Right, no doubt.
Yeah, he's been on this roster for about 2 years, but just he's fighting every year, I feel like, to keep that spot. And I think the depth that they've needed there has helped him, because he's been able to step up. But at the same point, it's like, Are there other guys now, like you mentioned, Gabe Judy Lawley, the guy that we all know out of Tennessee, and somebody who's been at some different schools.
Yeah.
He's
Vanderbilt,
really
BYU, right?
Yeah, BYU and the Tennessee. He's really mature too. I talked to him a couple days ago. My goodness, it's like you felt like he'd been in the league, but he's a guy that would be interesting to see how he developed, and I think it could be a really good fit in Denard Wilson's defense specifically.
I think that's key, though.
Yeah.
I think the difference between him and Avery, and I liked Avery making the team a couple years ago, but he's not a man-to-man guy down in and down out. That's the difference. He doesn't have that deep end speed. Still a little question mark. I want to see somebody challenge Lally a little bit from what I saw at practice, but it hadn't happened in a game. Game lights turn on and you play a little bit different. So I want to see him get contested there and playing deep balls, but other than that, everything else looks pretty good.
It really does. We're interested to see what Buck Reising thinks about this upcoming game. He is in New Orleans. Hopefully he had his alarm and he woke up on time. He said he'd text me if he didn't. So right now we're in the clear. Buck Reising will join us next.
Right now.
Coming up, on the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff. That is next here on 104.5 The Zone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. See, they can see.
Welcome back into the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home too. Your next play, visit leecompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. Kalya Anderson in studio with Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins, Buck Reising about to join us in about 5 minutes from New Orleans as he has made his way to the stadium. He'll connect with us in just a second. It's funny, guys. We have the NFL Network on in here, and we were talking about the Guardian caps, and clearly they introduced those last year, and you see them in practice, but they have an option to wear them in these preseason games. And Blaine, you brought up a good point. All I have seen was Jonathan Taylor the other night wearing it, and I barely could even tell it was on, but nobody's wearing them.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting there, B-Hop-Bait. I think it's not the cool thing, and it can mess off equilibrium. But you know what I did think, though? I was guessing, especially guys, in the trenches like yourself, you're hitting every play. As me, a DB or receiver, I'm not hitting every play. So I didn't think I never thought of, running back, absolutely.
Right.
But guys who are hitting every play, they're going to hit somebody. I thought offensive linemen were going to be starting the trend. I thought they would have. And then the defensive guys may have told him, but you tell us why you don't think that was ever going to happen, B-Hop.
I hate it when he comes up with a good idea because it makes sense to wear them in the trenches, right? It's the little hits.
It's the safety.
It's the number of little hits that, that culminate in the big issues, right. Now, I can see from a skill position standpoint, if I'm trying to run a go route or something like that, and I got this Gazoo-style helmet on my head, it might feel like it's weighing me down.
You got to work on your neck muscles.
Start doing something right.
Yes.
But the point is, like almost what you said, though, to look the part and being the part, the aesthetics matter to you skill position guys.
It does.
They stop wearing pads in their pants, Kayla. Protecting their legs from maybe smaller injuries, whatever. Why? Because it makes them more sleek. They're faster.
Oh, I definitely did that because I wanted to feel like I was fast. So I would take the threading out of where they even put the pads in there so it looked like I had on tights. Go back and look. It looked like I got on straight
I learned
tights.
something new today, here, guys.
Big bodies weren't thinking about that, Kayla. You trying to? Are you kidding me? Can you imagine 350-pound dude wearing some spandex? No,
I got
that's not
that from Chris
happening.
Dishman, by the way.
You say what?
Chris Dishman told me about the pants.
And that's a dish rag thing.
Yeah, I didn't care about everything else because I
Listen, I'm telling you what.
But that part, I wanted to feel fast.
The towels, the whole deal, right? So the fact that we're not seeing players wearing that thing, especially the ones where it matters how they look. I'm talking about from the shoe game to the sock height to everything else. They're not going to stick something on their head that makes them look like a popsicle or a lollipop. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think he's going to be a part of it.
And that's what some of the players told me when we asked about it at the beginning of camp. Calvin Ridley specifically is like, nah, I'm not wearing that.
See?
The look thing is one thing, but he's
would
a
have a
smaller
great
receiver
excuse
too.
if we're not getting those deep balls
He would.
if he had it on.
Now listen, in college we had to wear these clunky knee braces. Why? Because there's probably a high chance that someone's going to get rolled up, whatever else. So we had to forego the aesthetics for safety, right? I can see, like Blaine was mentioning, making defensive linemen, making offensive linemen that have those continual hits, over and over and over and over again, wear an extra layer of protection. And it's not a big deal, especially for big guys because they're already big and they ain't trying to,
Right.
We look more
not
like
trying to add anything else to it, right?
We look more like a blow pop than a.
You look like a robot,
Exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so it's just interesting because I could go a game and not touch somebody and maybe touch somebody 3 times in a game where they could say they did that on the first 3 plays of a game. See, just think about that now from a safety's perspective where I could go, I felt like I was stealing money when that happened too, by the way. I was like, dang, man, I only had 3 tackles. I only hit somebody 3 times? Wow.
Felt like more.
Did you give it back? Did you give it back?
Yeah, I was like, dang, I was doing backflips. But, so it's kind of interesting. I don't know when players are going to start buying in, and until somebody gets dinged around the head. I could say for me personally, I had to be forced to wear my mouthpiece at certain points in time because I was communicating. I could never communicate with my mouthpiece in. So they were like, Blaine, you got to wear your mouthpiece because I kept getting dinged to come out for a play or 2 and go back in. And so then I started wearing my mouthpiece on a regular basis. I just stick it in my thing and just forget to put it back in after I'm talking to people. So then I start putting it in my hand. Okay. That way I had no choice but to put it back in my mouth. But and you'll see sometimes quarterbacks used to do this. They'll come up to the up to the line of scrimmage, and they still have their mouthpiece in their helmet and don't ever put it back in.
That's true.
So that was the same thing kind of sort of thing. So it's kind of, I'm glad they did. The training staff there, Brad Brown was actually the head guy, really convinced me to do that because we had to wear them in college, mouthpieces.
Yep.
So, and it definitely helped with the biting on the mouthpiece to, even have these little, oh man, I hit somebody so hard. I'm like, oh, hey, this a little woozy.
I will say that made me feel grown when no one was there to tell me to wear it, though.
Oh,
when I was in college, I had to wear.
You're like,
I had to wear the ones that look like a bag.
exactly.
I had to wear the one that looked like a pacifier. You know, the one to cover your whole mouth, right?
Yeah,
You barely breathe with them things on.
Yeah.
But then when I got drafted, no one was there to say, "Hey, Hop, put your mouthpiece in." No, so I'm standing there like talking to Bruce, like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yeah.
With no
Where we going to dinner after the game, man?
Exactly.
I just know, you guys, I've had to wear my mouthpiece every night to bed, top and bottom retainers, baby. I'm not messing up that 6 years of braces. No way. Joining us now from New Orleans, I don't know, his teeth are perfect too. Maybe his retainers he wears at night. Buck Reising
He played football.
joins us. He did play a little ball. How you doing, Buck? Are you awake? I'm assuming no hangover this morning, just beignets and maybe a coffee.
Yeah, where'd you go? Tell us what you did, man.
Right.
I went everywhere.
We're living through you.
Everything. I do not wear retainers, unfortunately, but I probably should have had some kind of mouthpiece in last night to keep me from consuming half of New Orleans because I am, in fact, viciously hungover today, but we'll survive.
Well, we want to see an article real quick, not on just the food, but why players aren't wearing these Guardian caps there, Buck. Because I think you definitely would not. It would not look and say you want to look sweet. I know you wouldn't wear one.
Baby, I'm a show pony. You know how I roll, Blaine. But I think, well, actually, our colleague, Teron Davenport, just had a piece go up on ESPN.com this morning about players wearing them in the preseason. I don't know how many people watched Jonathan Taylor, the Colts running back, with the Guardian cap on. He had the cover to make it look less, like Toad from Super Mario. About 6 players so far we've seen in the preseason wearing the Guardian caps. Guys, and it should be taken into consideration for dudes who have had concussions, because of course we know that there are more frequently recurring concussions once you've had the initial incident. And for guys who are trying to make the roster in preseason games like this, who are trying to protect their availability as much as anything, especially for, how many guys are we already talking about here in Tennessee? Otis Reese, Luke Gifford.
Yep.
Wiley was in the concussion protocol for a period of time. This is something that players have to seriously think about, no matter how goofy you look wearing them.
Yeah, that's a good point, Buck. And also when you have momentum during camp and then you can't help a concussion, you're exactly right. It's kind of what happened to Wiley, who had built that momentum and then, fell to the ground in a play during joint practices. So great point right there. Buck Reising joining us from New Orleans. Of course, the League Company Countdown by League Company. All you need, you can visit them online at leaguecompany.com. So, Buck, obviously we know that the starters are going to be out there at least for 3 series, and that includes Will Levis, who, let's just be honest, has had some ups and downs during camp, and that's expected when you are in a new offense, learning some new things. But what do you want to see from Will Levis in game action today before the real stuff begins?
First and foremost, I want to see him protect the football, just like any of these quarterbacks. Turnovers are killer. I'm kind of good with the idea of him being boring, guys, in preseason action. They're not trying to show deep shot plays and stuff like that. Doesn't mean that should keep them from taking deep shot plays in the preseason. But if he goes, I don't want to say like 4 or 5 for 35, which he was in the first preseason game that he played in, but I'm okay with him checking it down. I'm okay with him hitting guys in the flat, taking 5, 6, 7-yard completions as opposed to trying to hero ball it down the field, because that, he, after the 4-touchdown debut, right, against Atlanta, he had 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. He had an average yards per completion of 12 yards. You don't have to be pushing the ball down the field that often. And we understand last year there was a bit more need for desperation type plays. But in this offense, he's got the answers to the test. They're keeping things very vanilla. I just want to see him come out there, operate cleanly, and frankly look more comfortable doing it. Right? No hesitation on whether to run for the goal line, whether to slide, whether to jump. Just do the thing that's going to let you live for the next down and play within the scope of what they're asking you to play.
So, Brad Hopkins, Blaine Bishop here in studio. I'm wondering for you guys when it comes to Will Levis, because you kind of said if we could see a little bit more of those, not splash plays, but some of those bigger plays that we haven't seen throughout camp. Blaine, is that specifically with Will Levis and maybe a guy like Calvin Ridley, or were you thinking maybe somewhat of, even Mason Rudolph?
No, what I was saying was I want to see more explosive plays, and more explosive plays is what the Titans haven't had when we're talking about somebody catches a 5-yard pass and turns it to 90. So I want to see some of that. We've never had really, maybe since, I don't know, Derek Mason, maybe, a dynamic player like that where you say, man, this guy, when he gets in the
home run
field,
hitter.
Right. He can take it to the house over the top on a sharp pass. So, and I think we have some guys that potentially can do that, whether we're talking about a running back or some other guy. So I want to see that even when we're talking about Levis up there dinking and dunking and taking what the defense gives him and showing some patience, which is really hard for a guy with a big arm like him. Burrow had to go through it. Mahomes went through it. All these young quarterbacks have to go through that. But I'd love to see some guys, really make some plays for the quarterback. And I think that'll make it a little bit easier for him to continue to be patient throughout this process before you're trying to hit the home run ball, as Buck was talking about.
Right.
Yeah, CJ2K was a master at that, man. He was a master at the home run hitter. For me, I just want to see him be decisive. I want to see him be accurate. That's it. I want to see his command of the offense, the one that he, Brian, and Nick are piecing together, right? Just his ease of getting the ball out of his hands. If there's timing to be made, how much rhythm, the pace that he throws at, that's all. And then once he takes the sideline, I want to see him just kind of helping maybe the process. What Mason Rudolph and Malik Willis are working against. Which one of those guys starts taking more of a step forward in that situation? Of course, people say decidedly right now it might be obviously Mason Rudolph, the guy with more experience. But, what role will Malik Willis play in the performance that he puts on today against the Saints? That kind of situation.
Buck?
Well, and to your point, guys, like getting the ball in the hands of the playmakers and letting them do the work for you, right? We saw that in the first game with Tony Pollard. We saw that in the first game with Calvin Ridley. So the explosive plays can come on these, these slants, these crossing patterns, these over-the-middle concepts and stuff like that. And then once you get the ball in those dudes' hands, we know how creative they are. We know how excellent they are. And certainly Tony Pollard, I look more like the Tony Pollard of old than the guy I saw last year in Dallas. I know it's preseason. I'm not trying to get too ahead of my skis, or what's Coach Mack say, keep your powder dry. But the explosive plays are possible, even if the quarterback is not having, a lot of air yards on those completions, right? It can travel 10 yards in the air and still be a 22-yard completion like that Ridley conversion in the first preseason game on 3rd and 10.
Well, Buck, I wanted to ask you in particular, do you think they should change how they do the stats for quarterbacks? If he throws it 5 yards, he should only get 5 yards on his stats. If he throws it 40 yards, should he only get 40 yards on a deep ball? And then the guy runs another 40 yards? Why does he get all the stats?
No, Blaine, I honestly, I don't know if they will, but seriously, I'm the same way with defensive guys, right? I would rather you count pressures than sacks. I learned more about you as a pass rusher, an individual pass rusher, from the amount of pressures that you get on a consistent basis, rather than the sacks that an edge guy is cleaning up for a Jeff Simmons who's forcing the quarterback out of the pocket to make those sacks. There, with all the GPS tracking, the next-gen stats, and all these things, and I know you're saying it tongue-in-cheek,
right?
But we should have the capability to better be able to analyze this sport. Now, I'm not saying you got to numbers it to death like we do with baseball, but advanced metrics and football are, in the same way that the Titans are hiring all kind of data scientists and computer scientists to help them understand the scouting process. All of this stuff is providing us with more information about how we watch the game, how we analyze the game. Doesn't mean you have to take it as gospel, but absolutely there should be smarter ways to apply it statistically than just looking at a box score and saying, oh, he threw 2 touchdowns and no interceptions today. He must have had a good game. Well, sometimes that's not always the case, and sometimes that's not really about the quarterback.
Buck, interesting note real quick before I ask you about Chance Campbell on defense. So Brian Callahan joined Ramon Kalen Will earlier this week, and when I think it was Will asked about what he's liked the most out of Will Levis this year, what he's seen the most in training camp, he said something along the sorts of just the footwork and maybe calming the feet a little bit. And it wasn't some dynamic answer, right? Where, it was maybe more so a detailed, smaller answer, Buck. But are these the things we want to hear, considering there is plenty of things that Will does great with the big arm, but there's these little details I think that we've been looking for that might not be as sexy and appealing, but when it comes to the long-term goal, it's going to make him a better quarterback.
I mean, I don't have to tell the football players in the room how critical technique is and how everything else comes as a result of being successful in your technique. And that's exactly what we're talking about with Will Levis. For example, Anthony Richardson. I don't know if you guys watched the Colts preseason game or not. He can make completions just by winging it down the field, right? But when you look at some of the throws that he's making, he's not doing it from a mechanically sound standpoint, which is why you get those roller coaster experiences. If they can iron Will out on a ground level and allow his eyes to be, or get to the point where his eyes are married to his feet, then he will be more successful as a result in every aspect of what they're trying to get him to execute in the offense. We know Will Levis is a talented player. I care more about him being a skilled player than a talented player. And what I mean by that is the more reps that you get with the mechanics, the footwork, the offense, all of these things, you continue to fine-tune your skill, not just rely on your God-given talent, which, of course, we know that all of these professional athletes have.
On the defensive side, Buck, Chance Campbell has had a great camp. And this is a guy who's in the past dealt with some injuries. So we haven't talked a lot about him. It's not like he has made a huge impact on this defense. But this camp, he's kind of proven he belongs on this 53-man roster. And then with the fourth-round pick, Cedric Gray, having the shoulder injury, it kind of opened up some more room for him to get reps. Is he legitimately going to be a valuable part of this offense moving forward, just considering the past we haven't seen as much of him?
You mean defense, of course, talking about Chance Campbell.
Yes.
And I would say to your point, Kayla, all he's done is everything that they've asked him to do, right? Stack days at practice. He's done that. Take the meetings to the field in practice. He's done that. Carry over what you've learned throughout the course of the week and apply it to a preseason game. He's done that. So, I mean, the difference between him and Gibbons is not so great that he shouldn't get some opportunities. And I'd be curious to see what Denard Wilson's plan with the off-ball linebackers is today in particular with Chance Campbell and the fact that he continues to deliver. And, we've talked about him before. He's not the greatest athlete, and sometimes that he can get out of position, but he's not so much less of an athlete than Gibbons that there shouldn't be some kind of discourse there. And just because, the feeling right now is that Jack Gibbons would open as the week one starting off-ball linebacker alongside Kenneth Murray, but I don't see why that can't be a fluid situation as we continue to work our way through these things. I know that, of course, there will be less opportunity once we get through the preseason for guys like Chance Campbell, but I mean, all he can do is what they've asked him to do, and he's done that and more to his credit. So I think that he has continued to get rewarded with additional opportunities. Today will be pretty interesting to see if at all he works in with the starting defense, given how many snaps they're expected to play today.
Hey, listen, 123 total tackles last year for Jack Gibbons. That sounds much like a starter, but when you look at the productivity from Chance Campbell just this preseason, 11 solo tackles. I mean, Blaine, you can speak to that. 17 totals and tackles in all. I mean, the range is there. It's got a sack, a pass defensed, so there's a lot of range that he's shown in that instance. So I'm not sure if there's just not a very similar situation. Is that a depth player, do you think, Blaine? Maybe somebody that could be stashed away on teams? Or do you really expect him to be a part of the process? How often do we see that second layer of defense rotate in and out? I didn't think we did that much.
No, not really. It's going to be interesting. We'll get to see what the coaches are actually thinking in this game if they actually put them in there with the ones.
Right.
And rotate him in with Gibbs just to confirm their thought that he can be part of this starting group, and how does he perform against the ones in an actual game? We all know the level of play kind of intensifies a little bit there. And they've had him in attacking mode, which is really astonishing. He's the guy that's doing a lot of blitzing. And I'm just saying from my experience, typically then that kind of rotates to the other guy come regular season early on, and that way you kind of balance it out. So I don't know if he's really a starter or not, because here's what we are seeing, and that's what everybody sees. And I don't know this. I'm not watching film yet of guys until we get the breakdown of once we get to the 53. But he's making splash plays when given the opportunity. But is he doing what he's supposed to do on the normal, regular, every down plays?
Right.
Is he reading his keys and doing those things? I'm not watching him in depth like that.
Right.
So I want to say he should be given an opportunity just to see, because he's making some really splash plays. Here's a good example. The one interception he had in the end zone. See, if I'm in the meeting room, I'm saying, you should have knocked it down.
Batted it down,
See,
yeah.
because you let risk that somebody could have tipped it because he caught it on his back feet falling backwards. You got to knock that down and live for another day and not be more like that. Now, you can do it in the preseason and all that, but it's a teaching moment, not necessarily saying, oh, that's a bad play, but hey, you were really risky here. With the ones, that's going to be a risky play, and that ball is going to be caught by somebody. So, especially how he caught it. So, this is the things I'm talking about. And it's not like overcoaching them, but it's like, let's be aware of where we're at on this field, and you're in end zone. If you didn't catch it,
Sure.
Somebody around you will.
Somebody will, yeah.
Yeah, see, so that's what I'm saying. So he has shown out. I'm happy that he stayed healthy and done a good job. I want to see him given the opportunity to mix in there. And I don't know if the coaches really see him in that fashion as a starter.
Yeah, I agree, guys. What we do know is there is a starter that's going to return to the field today. And Buck, I don't know if Ryan Stonehouse is out there yet, because I know he's always like the first one out there just working, doing his pregame work. But what do you expect to see from him today, since this is his first return to game action since last December?
Wow.
This man walked in with the starting quarterback and starting wide receiver in his Joe Burrow glasses, his hair slicked back. He is excited, Ryan Stonehouse, to get out there. It's been 266 days since he's been able to resume normal football activities fully, right? He dressed out for the first two preseason games. Brian Callahan said they weren't going to let him punt for precautionary reasons, and now he's ready to go for the first time since that December 3rd game that saw him suffer a pretty severe leg injury. We had him on the show, and he talked about the rehabilitation process. And, of course, this guy is known for being able to rocket launch the ball down the field. And for a while, he couldn't hit a 40-yard punt. So now we're going to see what Ryan Stonehouse looks like. He's a legitimate weapon, right? When used correctly, we don't have to tell Titans fans how important punters are around here, especially when you're only scoring 17 points per game the way that this team has for the last two seasons. But in particular, it is going to be interesting to see how it all works mechanically. He's also going to get some opportunities to hold out there for the field goal unit, which he hasn't done in a while in a game situation. So good Titans fans will be happy to see him start to return to play rather than just dropping him out there in week one and expecting everything to be fine and him average 53 yards a punt again.
Yeah, I know we're all excited to see Stoney out there. You're exactly right. He is a weapon for this team indeed, so it will be good to see him back. Before we let you go, Buck, I have to ask you what your bet is going to be this week, because when we return, we're going to give our pro props. And I do believe you got one back on us last week. So we're all 1-1 right now. We're evened up.
Don't let me get hot. Don't let me get hot.
Hell, anyway, worry about you getting hot. Let's go.
What you got cooking?
Hey, listen, you keep that energy, Brad, and I'll talk to you. See you out there. I am looking at today's game, seeing the Saints as home favorites. The question here is how much is New Orleans going to play their starters, if at all, because Dennis Allen has been real hush-hush about that. I'd probably take the Titans to cover the spread at this point in today's game because the starters are expected to play that much, and with so much variance on the Saints side of the football, you don't know if they're going to be out there against the ones. You don't know if they're going to be out there against the twos.
Right.
I'd like the Titans to be able to show that they can score, and I know Brian Callahan's emphasis is for them to score, so maybe going for it on fourth down if they get into a situation where a field goal might be questionable. I would take the Titans in the points.
Okay, there you have it. Titans in the points for Buck Reising. We'll give you our pro props in just a minute. Thanks, Buck, and enjoy the press box food. I don't know what it will be, but we're excited to see whatever picture you print.
Yep.
Oh, God, I can't eat any more food. I'm still walking off the oysters from yesterday.
Yes, you can. Don't be a slacker.
You got this, Buck.
Let's go.
We've got your back.
Rally.
Did you have any beignets?
Oh, you got it.
Oh, yeah, I had some beignets. Are you kidding me? All they
Some
get
of
in
that
this
sugar,
city
man.
is butter, salt, and bread, Blaine. I can't escape it. There's
And we
nowhere to
love
run
it.
and hide.
Well, get on the treadmill when
And
you get back.
brown liquor.
Exactly.
Yeah, drive-through. The drive-through liquor
I'm
store.
on that divorced white woman diet. I drink clear liquor.
Okay, we'll go to break on that.
Tito's.
Thanks, Buck. When we
See you, Buck.
return, we will have pro props. This is the Lee Company countdown to kickoff. Lee Company, all you need. Visit them online at leecompany.com. You're watching 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back into the Lee Company countdown to kickoff as the Titans are down in New Orleans today, taking on the Saints. Facility managers need a reliable partner for their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical needs. They trust Lee Company's 24/7 service and their team of experts. Your next play, visit leecompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. Okay, guys, so at the end of every first hour, we have been doing our pro props. We're just 2 weeks in, and we are all tied up at 1-1. So Brad and I lost last week.
Hold on a second. Justin, help me out here.
What?
You said I was undefeated.
How?
You said I was 2-0.
No, you said Malik Willis would play the whole first half,
Did I say that?
the whole first half. Like he would be the quarterback.
Help me, Jay.
Joseph gave it to him.
What?
What happened?
Yeah, Joseph gave it to me.
But Rudolph came in midway through the second quarter.
Joseph's, hey.
Nope, I'm about to be
Wait
the judge.
a second.
No, there's a default here. No, it's 1-1. I'm going to be a judge. I'm going to pay attention from here on out. I'm going to write it down.
Erroneous!
People are
Erroneous!
People are not being
thing is rigged.
fair and unjust
like,
to people. That
wait
is
a
not
second.
true. I think he just said
man.
yes.
This thing
I think
is
he said, "Oh, Brad's pretty big."
Yeah, Blaine.
He did. He's like-
Blaine, he just wants Blaine to
Hands up.
win. That's all.
Right?
I'm not even participating. That's why I'm going to be the
Blake.
judge.
Fine. I'll be even with the rest of you guys.
That's how we like it.
Let's go.
We talked you into it.
Exactly. So I think Buck just took in before he left us. He took the Titans at -5.5, right?
5.5. Okay.
So
Yeah.
that is what he's doing because he thinks he doesn't know how much the Saints starters will play, and we know for sure at least the Titan starters are playing about 3 series. So go with what you believe on Buck if you want to go with Buck. But I'll ask you what you're
Tracking
doing.
it.
So what I'm
track
doing is
that, Blaine.
I'm saying that Will Levis throws his first touchdown of the preseason.
Okay.
He's got a
Because he
rushing
had a rushing
touchdown. He's got a rushing touchdown,
Yeah.
but not a passing touchdown. So
Okay.
maybe that lends to Blaine what you wanted to see in explosive plays. He throws that quick,
some continuing.
right. He throws that quick slant. All of a sudden, to the house call, baby,
see
and
that.
that's where I win the prop bet.
Okay. And
that's
that's
your
a
prop.
fair one.
Or I did have this one. Which one do you think? 1A, 1B. Spencer Rattler. And when you said something about Spencer
I
earlier
did.
on, Spencer Rattler
Yeah, that's
gives the ball.
Spencer Rattler from South Carolina.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. Spencer Rattler gives the ball to the Titans defense.
Oh, he throws an
I bet
interception.
on that one.
Oh, my.
But I don't know if Spencer. Well, he will play.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he
In the
will
back end, he's
play.
going to play.
Man, I'd go more so. My gut tells me that he's going to give a ball to the Titans defense.
More so than Will throwing a touchdown?
But listen to what Buck said. You know, Buck said that he doesn't know how much they're going to really allow Will to,
Oh.
you know,
Get after it.
So I don't know if they'll hand the ball off even when they get in the red zone. I mean, but Tyler Boyd's been one of those guys that he's felt comfortable with in red zone play. So maybe it's a Tyler Boyd touchdown today.
Well, I'm going to say this. If what happens with Spencer Rattler comes true, then I would say that whoever got the pick may have made the team.
Yeah.
Think about that.
You're
In the
not
playmaking
wrong.
situation, you know, of course, it's later in the ball
it's
game. You're
someone
talking about a guy.
trending
You're talking about a guy late in the ball game on a preseason that's probably fighting for that last remaining roster spot. And
worst case scenario,
if you're the dude
Yeah.
that comes down with the pick, you know, Spencer Rattler, like, hey, that's a huge feather in your cap.
Well, pick one.
Let's do Spencer. Let's do
Okay.
Spencer.
Going out on a limb. Spencer
Yeah, let's do it.
Rattler. He at least is going to throw one pick.
Yep.
Okay. I like it. I'm going back to the Tennessee Titans offense, and I do like what you say. I feel like there could be a couple touchdowns in this. I don't know if they're going to come from Will Levis, but I'll think Will Levis will maybe do at least one of those on a drive. So
Yeah.
I'll do Will Levis and then maybe Mason Rudolph. So I'm going to take the Titans for 2 passing touchdowns in this game. That's at plus 220. So Titans at 2+ passing touchdowns is what I'm going with for my pro prop. All right. Blaine, you went with
Maybe.
me last week, so probably don't go with me.
I'm going with
Now I'll get it.
B-Hop went with Rattler interception.
did.
I think I'm gonna go with B-Hop.
I know. I think that's a good one to go with.
That is a pretty good one. You got to think, he's gonna try to, show.
Try and make something happen.
He's gonna try.
I mean, look at Trey Lance last night. Sweet heavens of goodness.
Oh, I always
Yeah,
saw a
you
little
guys were
bit-
talking about him when I
I'm a
came
little
in.
disappointed, man. He is. Oh, man,
I almost forgot about him.
I know.
You didn't last night.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't look so good, huh?
He's in Dallas right now.
Come on, Blaine, from what we saw in North Dakota, this dude, you can't touch him, right? bad decisions. Now, some things happen that were out of his control, tip balls and stuff like that. It happens, but golly, just
and we were looking up like what the 49ers gave up to get him, and then what they gave up, when they traded him, and that's a red flag, a red herring there when they traded him. Like, well, but we know Purdy's good, but dang, they didn't even want to give him a shot. They say this guy does not have the goods,
right?
At least as of right now. So wow,
and that kind of brings me to a quick point too, guys. Before we take our next break, in terms of Malik Willis, because I think we're still wondering, is he going to make this roster? And I know we've seen improvements from him. I mean, we really have. And I think even in last week's game where he played a good chunk of that game, there were things that were bright spots maybe where we hadn't seen before, even a little more comfortable in the pocket, right? Where we hadn't seen that before. But he was so behind, and this has been a good training camp for development, but it's still like he's still learning all of this stuff. Is it enough to keep him on the roster? And could they put him on the practice squad and keep him? Because there's always that team that wants to be the fix-it, right? Or thinks, hey, this could be something we could work with.
Yeah, man, I'm real. You know what? I'm gonna just be completely contrite and like, I want Malik Willis to be successful. I really do, because of what he had to do to get to this point. He's worked really hard. He didn't run a pro-style offense. He's gradually, incrementally gotten better each and every year. That shows you the work that he's putting in. He's trying to be, and then he makes some bad throws, and then you see, oh my gosh, when he made that outcut throw and went over the top and he dropped it in the
beautiful
bucket, I was like, oh man, that's at the highest of the high level of a throw there. So I just don't know if he's quite there yet. I would say he's at the bottom tier of being a number two. He's not a number two. I think that's really his cap. I think he's really going to be a number two in this league. So they may, still to be determined in this game, if he plays well, I think they will get a little shaky. And then, you can always find a number three, but somebody that you put this much effort into, maybe not this staff, but he's shown glimpses that he can be a number two potentially. So you want to buy yourself a little more time, one more year, and see if he actually can get it done. So I really want him to make the roster, but there's so many fights here at the end of the roster. They probably be able to cut him and still sign him back.
Yeah.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah, the Titans need to do themselves a favor and at least take a look at what they have in the best offensive scheme that they've had since he's been here, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what this dude can improve into. You never know.
He's definitely improved, man.
Exactly.
And they've talked about Bo Hardegree, quarterbacks coach, has just done wonders for, honestly, has helped all of these quarterbacks. But, and you've got an offensive-minded staff now, so you have seen those leaps and bounds, and hopefully, like you said, Blaine, even if he is on the practice squad, they can keep him and continue to develop him, because be a good guy to go against every week in practice.
Yeah, I think he could be a number two eventually in another year. I think you could see his confidence grow. He's still not quite there going through his progression reads. He still filters outside the pocket. He's trying to outrun people. Can't do that in the NFL instead of stepping in there. But he's showing glimpses every time you see him play on every play, like, oh, he's getting better. You see it. Yeah. So it's just you want to speed up that pace. That's how the coaches are like, dang, we want to get him there now.
Exactly.
Now you see a little taste of success with them a little bit at times. You just want to see a little more consistency.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Well, the League Company countdown to kickoff with the Titans and Saints continues in just a moment. Of course, we're brought to you by League Company. League Company, all you need. Visit them online at leaguecompany.com. And when we do return, it is hour 2 as we are leading you up to Titans Radio before kickoff at 1 p.m. We'll talk a little bit about the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, and how do we feel about the depth at the tackle positions? We'll get to that. That's coming up next here on 104.5 The Zone.
Yikes!
Welcome into the Lee Company countdown to kickoff hour 2 as we lead you into Titans radio. And then, of course, game time at 1 p.m. Central today in New Orleans as the Titans are down there. We've already checked in with our good friend Buck Reising. So now you've got the two B's and K, Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins, Kalya Anderson here. You guys remember that movie, 3 Men and a Little Baby? It was, back in the day.
It was Ted Danson.
Yes. I can't remember the other people in it, but it's a hit.
Definitely remember the name.
It reminded, I was like, maybe it's 3 B's and a K. 3 B's and a K.
I thought we had the killer bees and you were the killer.
That's actually, I like that better.
Oh, yeah.
Way
Because
better.
even when Buck sent, there's another bee.
That's right.
Yeah.
Lee Company, we are brought to you by Lee
brought on a
Company.
running back from
Facility
high school.
managers need a reliable
That's
partner
right, yeah.
for their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical needs. They trust Lee Company's 24/7 service and their team of experts. Your next play, visit leecompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. So, guys, we've touched on a lot of things. What we haven't really touched on, though, is the offensive and defensive line. What was it?
It was Tom Selleck. It wasn't.
Thank
Ted
you,
Danson.
Tom Selleck. That's
Thank you,
stash.
Thank you, Randy
How can you
Huber on the
forget
chat.
that stash,
Tom
right?
Selleck,
I knew some dark-haired dude.
Yeah. Stash is
It is static. He was in Magna Pi. Was that?
Yeah, it was Magna Pi.
Oh, yeah.
No. Hold on a second. Are you kidding me? That's Frank Reagan from Blue Bloods, bro.
Oh,
Don't get it
okay.
twisted,
Okay.
all right?
All right,
I don't care who he was in a previous life driving a Ferrari with them Daisy Dukes on. But this is Frank Reagan, the most
okay.
righteous dude on the planet
I
right
think I
there.
caught you walking around the locker room with those same jean shorts on, bro.
Oh God, you guys wear those back in the day?
Wait,
That's
don't
where they
believe
shoot
everything.
started.
Don't believe everything he says, Caleb. Good Lord.
I thought they were called jorts.
He was. They did call him jorts. They wearing him now. Gardner Minshew wore him.
Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, he wore
They
him.
come. The jorts are back.
Did you see that video of him, by
That's
the
right.
That
way?
was hilarious. He's working out.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Oh man, I was like, hey, what is he doing? He's that quarterback don't work out like that.
Starting quarterback for the Las Vegas
Raiders.
Raiders, baby.
No,
We'll see how that goes. Defensive and offensive lines, guys. Let's start with the defense for a second, just because we haven't seen Jeffrey Simmons in any preseason action. We don't need to. But we have seen Tavondre Sweat. We have seen Sebastian Joseph Day, who I think has done a good job for the most part as being a depth piece. But more so than that, do we really even know much about this Denard Wilson defense yet, since it hasn't been completely unveiled?
Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was actually leading into, obviously, the defensive guru we have here
Yeah.
on the show. They haven't been able to cut it loose.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of what defensive scheme comes from what they're facing. You know what I mean? Is this a team that has a high probability of throwing it? Are they going to try and run it between the tackles? Are they play actioning? Is there a lot of, jet sweep stuff? Are we doing, is there a lot of movement, a lot of motion? And in putting together a game plan, you can start to see them kind of pin their ears back, get aggressive in those instances that they prepared for. But we haven't seen that yet. And I don't know how much we'll see that today. You know what I mean? Guys flying around.
Right.
Maybe just to see what kind of an impact the latter end of the roster makes, in those situations. Can they be playmakers? Can they respond in those moments and make a play or do something that, has an influence on the game, whatever. But just to determine at this point, I think his foundation is that toughness, that flying around mentality, that hit you in the mouth. Don't just react, it's be proactive and just being aggressive and whatnot. So I don't know if that's more the approach, because I haven't really seen him, put together something that gives us that indication. But, Blaine, what do you think? I mean,
yeah, I'm somewhat there. I'm gonna start here first, though. I'm not a real big proponent on, not playing in the preseason.
Yeah.
So I think all players should be playing. I'm gonna start with that. I don't care how good a player you are.
Yeah.
Mahomes is the best player in the National Football League, and he's been playing 2 weeks. So every year, as B-Hop knows, is a prove-it year, and you got to show you are just as good or better than the previous season. So I think everybody should be freaking playing, and unless you're injured at some point, whether superstar player, Hall of Fame level type potentially player, you got to give me some series or something. I got to see something. If you get hurt in a 3, 4, 6, 9 window play, then it wasn't meant to be. So you can't play scared and think that somebody's going to get hurt. So I'm going to start with that first, especially defensively, and somebody in the trenches. So I think all those guys should be playing. Now, as far as regard to, Denard Wilson in this thing. I think we've seen pot shots of what they want to do, really. You don't have your two starting corners. Let's start there. First of all, this defense, he said it works from the backside in. Well,
Absolutely.
Naturally that's true because they're going to be out on that island. And, you don't have those two island guys. That's why I was talking about Trey Avery and different players who may not fit their scheme on an every down basis as a man-to-man. So I think we've seen highlights and glimpses of what they potentially could be. But you know what I really want to see? I don't want to see him get after the court because I know he's going to do that. I want to see if we can get pressure with just 4.
Okay.
I want to see that and let players just play. And let's see if they can do their assignments and be where they need to be. And maybe the objective is, from a defensive perspective, is not to actually, let's say, win the game. Just see if everybody can do their responsibility. I'm not saying not blitz here or there or what have you, but I really want to see guys fly around and have opportunities to play without thinking and making sure they do their responsibility. So I'm more so that this in this last game to see if you see something that you hadn't seen in a game from a player that maybe in practice was a little bit different in this game. That's probably where I'm at. When you're an attacking style defense, you get to see, we've got to see Chance Campbell do a lot of blitzing, right?
Yes,
but
we
haven't
have.
seen the other linebackers do that. Matter of fact, we haven't even got to see Gibby do that this preseason. So that's why his stats are elevated because, first of all, he's playing more and he's had more opportunity. We were at Chance Campbell. So I just want to see if other guys can do something that we haven't seen out of them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're not going to see the starters in that secondary playing together today. But does it concern you at all? Like you just mentioned, starters or whoever you are needing to get that time together. Does that concern you at all that they haven't had that kind of time in the preseason?
Well, for me personally, I was big on chemistry, guy. If I look at you, you know what I'm thinking. I know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Well, if we were on a team together previously, I don't think I would have a big issue with it.
Right.
But these guys are being new. I have a little bit of an issue with it, but not as much because they play a lot of man-to-man. It's easy to say, you got that guy,
Sure.
right? but when you're having adjustments and guys are motioning and things start to happen and we're doing some different things, you can talk through some things, but that doesn't mean it's going to work. You can walk through some things, and it doesn't mean that you got it. Well, I mean, sometimes it takes certain players 3 or 4 times before they have it, and we're out on the field, and I'm up there frustrated like, hey, man, we did this 3 times already, and we get in the game or in practice, and you still got it wrong. So I don't know if they're on that level. I don't know their IQ and where they're at, but you want to make sure you got some veteran guys back there, by the way, too, 2 veteran safeties, Hooker and everybody, as well as some veteran, DBs. So it may not be as big of an issue, but me as a player, I was always an instinctive guy, and I like to work with my guys at least a week or 2. And they've gotten a little bit of that. I just want to see a little bit more. And we may get to that, by the way, because we still have a little bit of time. How much time we have before the first regular season game?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Right, so we eventually may get there, and that's plenty enough for these veteran guys who are playing in the corner to work with the guys.
You had mentioned really quick the safety position, and we know Amani Hooker, right? What have you thought? Because he hadn't had a lot of practices when we entered joint practices with the Seahawks. I think he was just getting into like his 4th practice, but now we've seen a little bit more from him. We'll see him in the first preseason game for the Titans coming up today. Have you liked just basically what you've seen so far? He's still kind of getting used to everything.
Right. I haven't seen a lot from him in practice, but he's one of those veteran players. You go watch him. He's always around the football.
Sure.
So he's that post player in the defense, quarterback of the defense back there in the secondary. He's always making plays. One thing I can say, right before the game this last week, I don't know what it was, but it was DB on DB crime, and that shouldn't be happening out there. Talking to his other DBs from the Seahawks that he used to be with in warm-ups in the game, they got into a huge dispute. I don't know what it was, but he was the ringleader, and boy, he was not a happy camper. And so what I can say is that they have added 2, hopefully they stay healthy, 2 dudes that are dogs, and I can work with dudes like that now.
Right.
Those are the type of dudes when the ball hikes, they not taking no crap from nobody. So I think there's a part of the secondary and this team in general that you want to see some guys. I think we have some good players, but I don't think there's some, crap talker type dudes who, really get after it and try to really get in your head. And now we've added 2 of those guys. How much they play or not, I think Diggs may be potentially starting, kind of let Hooker, who has multi-talented skills, move around and do a lot of different things, whether whether it's handling the slot, blitzing. He could play post and back and cover. So there's a lot of things he can do where Diggs is kind of that quarterback guy, read the quarterback, and is always making mostly the right decisions getting after. And I still think he has enough left in the tank to make some plays. But there are some deficiencies in this game, by the way. I mean, one of them is speed. I could, probably say that at the end of my career. So you try to let his brains do all the talking and his instincts from his experiences and making plays on the ball.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see that indeed. What we are looking forward to seeing once the regular season begins, as we stay on defense for a moment, is if Kenneth Murray can be that player they expect him to be here. I believe he is, because he was out at practice last week. He actually spoke to us on Thursday. I was really impressed with him because we haven't heard a ton from him. He's taken on a big leadership role. He's talked about wearing the green dot, but he still feels comfortable because they're letting him play free. He's a guy that we've seen kind of diagnose quickly. Overall, I think that's a big piece you're waiting on too, because they kind of took a gamble on this guy because he didn't exactly show what he needed to when he was with the Los Angeles Chargers.
And that's his motivation.
Yeah,
his motivation,
and you can
first
tell.
off, yeah, we remember Kenneth Murray from college. This dude
Oklahoma.
was a wrecker, right?
Dude, he just looks like a freak.
So then he goes to the Chargers, and we're thinking they're going to get that kind of impact player, and he didn't show up.
No.
But it's not to say that he doesn't have that kind of ability or confidence in his game that he can do that. And I think Denard Wilson kind of been planning a little support. Obviously, Brian Callahan speaks glowingly of his effect on the game. That's making him have an impactful camp. He hasn't been talking to us much,
right? But
he's been speaking on the field when he's available, of course. But I think that this is one of those situations where he's taking this as an opportunity for him to show everybody who he can possibly be, and that's to the defense's benefit.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. That's why, I don't get into conjectures about what other people say about players when they were at different places. I like to go watch film, and I watched them. He is an elite level talent. Yep. That is for sure. There's no doubt about it. I even remember him at Oklahoma. Now, were there inconsistencies there? Now, you don't know the kind of coaching he was getting. You don't know what kind of work he was actually putting in himself. So I was assuming that they put in their due diligence with their background work on what they thought he could be and potentially be, because he definitely wasn't achieving the level of type of talent that he has. This guy is super talented. Kind of on the freakish level, too, by the way.
Is.
So, just to see that he's coming here with the right coach, I think Frank Bush is kind of connected with him. And then all of a sudden you see players start elevating their game. And then what people said that they couldn't do, all of a sudden they could. Well, if he could do it now, he obviously could have done it before. So why was that? Was it him or was it them? So you just never know, and both sides got to take part in ownership of that. Himself, he's involved in that, and sometimes maybe you didn't get the kind of confidence that you needed to push you to that next level, or they didn't push him that way. Obviously, this coaching staff has, and I'm excited. I can't wait to actually watch him. I can't imagine him doing that blitz Chance Campbell been doing. I'd love to see a running back stand right there and take that on.
Me too.
Boy, with a hip full head of steam, boy, they're going to be a brave soldier there. So I'm excited about what he can bring to the table. I was initially when they signed him. If you get a little more consistency out of him, he could be Pro Bowl level type player.
Yeah, he's been impressive up to this point, so hopefully we get to see that continue in games. You're listening to the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff, of course. Lee Company, all you need, you can visit them online at leecompany.com. So we've talked a little bit about the defense, guys. What we will see in this game coming up here at 1 p.m. is we're going to see the starters on the offensive line.
Yeah, BDB.
I'm excited to get your guys' thoughts about this because we're starting to slowly kind of see them gel. And it's never going to be perfect to start the year, right? I mean, they've got to get the chemistry together. But you've kind of figured out the right side with Dylan Radins at guard. Nicholas Petit-Frere looks to be your starters. And before I get you guys' breakdown, I want to go to Dylan Radins earlier this week. And this is what he had to say about what they want to accomplish in about 3 series here today.
Just efficiency, being able to show that we can move the ball in an away environment, consistency along with that, all 3 drives, just continuing to move the ball. When we played in San Francisco, 2 drives, 2 touchdowns. Granted, we got good field position, so just being able to replicate that consistency and being able to be efficient on the road, I think will give us a huge confidence boost going into the season.
Sorry, late to the party.
So, efficiency.
Yeah. Clean pocket.
Yep.
Just giving Will Levis exactly what he needs in those few series, to get his job done. We talked about his decision-making accuracy. Well, that starts with the guys up front giving him the time to do whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. And it's good that they get this unit out there, the unit that will be together for the next 18 weeks to get some reps and being on the road and that environment that we talked about earlier. It does exist for these dudes too. But we know J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Dylan Radins, and Nicholas Petit-Ferrer will be the commanders of the trenches. Now, I think that, we don't switch these guys in and out like we do defensive linemen, trying to keep up the consistency of a pass rush, right? So this is the unit. They can look around to each other and say, hey, look, we are the fist that's going to make this thing work. And I think Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, he suggested even a long time ago that, hey, look, I'm the right guy for this position. We've seen Dylan Radins make the improvements under Bill Callahan to legitimately take over that right guard spot. Now, let's get the reps together that create some consistency in this offense. That's all they need now. We've got the bodies, right? We've got the Jimmies and Joes. Now let's run those X's and O's like we know what we're doing.
Well, I was interested in seeing where this right side would go because that was really my concern. Not only that, but also a backup tackle. But it seems like those guys were thrown into the forefront and they've kind of risen. I want to see some more consistency out of Dylan Radins. And I did predict during training camp that he would be the guy before training camp started to be the starter because of what I saw from him and with the coaching with Callahan. I thought he improved immensely. And if they could just keep him at one spot, which is really difficult for the staff before, in that they were trying to piecemeal based off of his play and then other guys getting injured, they were trying to get him out there. I thought it was a little unfair for him to be a tackle guard. He did it in an actual game. I'd love to ask B-Hop what that's like to play guard and tackle in one individual game. I think that's really tough for a guy that had question marks at that time. As a player, I think he's gotten a lot stronger. He's gotten a lot thicker. I was really impressed, even in OTAs, of where he was going, and that's kind of led to me in the prediction. Now, he got the prediction. I got it right because somebody retired, but I'm interested to see if he can hold on to that. There's been some times the last preseason game where I thought he could have done a better job, especially on some of these pulls and blocks, and he just kind of dove into the turf and missed the whole individual. We're talking about like 2 plays that were bad. Everything else, he's been pretty consistent. So let's see if he can just kind of continue to grow and build this confidence level to a point where he feels like he is now vilifying and telling everybody that I am the dude by the actions on the film. And that's important to players. Once now you believe you're the guy, then you go out there and act on it. Then it's reinforcing by what you see on the field and your coaching staff. Then the confidence level rises. And hopefully that happens for pretty much everybody, them working together.
Dylan has finally started to live up to his potential.
And he's been able to stay in one spot working for a period of time.
I think that helps.
6'5", 3 bills. He's got a tackle's body. Sure. In my opinion, tackles can play guard. Guards can't always play tackle because at tackle, you got to work in space and sometimes by yourself. At least a guard, you're protected on both sides, center to your left or your right, or tackle in that situation, right? But when you look at Dylan Radins and the coaching that he's getting, this dude was the 53rd pick of the draft not that long ago.
Second rounder.
Okay, there's some expectation to come along with that. But as much as inconsistencies we talked about other positions, offensive line has been one of those ones that has not had the luxury of good coaching, not consistent coaching, right? And now we have that. And with Dylan Radins now being an active participant in that coaching, it's now easy to see why he has kind of risen to this occasion to be the 53rd pick of the draft like he was supposed to.
Yeah. Well, and I love when people always say this, you were picked, 16, 19, whatever it was.
13, man.
13.
Come on.
No, I want to slat you there.
Dang.
And Dylan Radins 53.
Yep.
Like, who do you think puts more pressure on you, your pick or yourself? As an athlete, nobody puts more pressure on themselves but themselves. So wherever you go in the pick, if you have high expectations of yourself, then you're going to try to exceed all of those and be the best version of you. If you let where you go in the pick dictate the pressure that you put on yourself, then you're not where you need to be. He should be putting the pressure on himself and then go out there and exude it and do it. So now, to B-Hop's point, he is living up to that now. We shall see now in a regular season game.
Yeah.
I guess and maybe I shouldn't have been, when I watched Nicholas Petit-Ferrer coming out of Ohio State, now clearly he was a 3rd round pick. Let's see. Nicholas Petit-Ferrer,
he was 3rd round.
3rd round, yeah. So I remember him coming in. I remember that first year, and it's kind of funny now that they're side by side because both Dylan Radins and Nicholas Petit-Ferrer competed for that right tackle spot.
They did.
And MPF won that. And now I think it's great because you got these two guys that are working side by side and are building a whole new type of chemistry. Maybe it was me thinking last year, since he lost a lot of that sophomore year, Nicholas Petit-Frere, that it was going to be tough for him to come in right away. While he was in there doing the film work, Bill Callahan is so particular in the details and all the technique. And it seems, for the most part, you tell me if I'm wrong, that he hadn't really skipped a beat once he stepped out on that field.
Listen, offensive line play is not about your athleticism, because we're probably by and large the least athletic guys on the football field. What it's about is technique and consistency. And Nicholas Petit-Frere, Dylan Radins, these upper to mid-round picks are now getting the best coaching that they've had. Okay? Sometimes there needs to be some adjustment from their game in college because they're still getting used to that pro scheme. And if you're not getting the right instruction, then guess what? There's some hiccups in your game. Well, now they're starting to get a different level of coaching, one that will then lend them to being the picks that they were in the draft. These are two picks in second round and third round that are now starting to get it of sorts, right? First round picks with their ability to transition and adjust to the game, they're supposed to be on the field immediately. And that's part of the metric when you draft a guy that high. Can he be plugged and played and go in? They're not going to draft a Joe Alt, a J.C. Latham, or any of these other first rounders and expect them to sit. It's just not going to happen, especially at offensive line. And when you've got second and third rounders, sure, the pressure is not near as much as the first rounder, but it's still there. Because this isn't a 6th or 7th round guy that barely makes the team.
It's coming from the outside in. The player actually puts the most pressure on himself.
That's what I'm talking about. The pressure. I put more pressure on myself than John McClain ever did. Why? Because I want to live up to the 13th pick of the draft and say, hey, all you dudes standing around me, I'm worth the 13th pick because I'm out here laying it down. And that's exactly what I want the perception about me. So I'm not listening to what anybody else says, because guess what? 99% of this planet can't do what I'm doing. So why am I listening to you?
That's a good point.
With the dudes that are standing to my left and my right, the guys that I'm blocking against, the ones that are talking about, man, I go up against B-Hop every day in practice, and he is soft. Or I can't get around this dude, man. This guy is an amoeba, man. He's all over the place. So...
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, though, kind of take us through. You talked a little bit about, now they're getting the coaching, B-Hop. Like, how hard is it and this is every position, but for offensive linemen, I think it's a little bit hard. I want you to go in the depth of how hard is it to change your habits that you've had from college, that you've been relying on, and you could call it techniques, habits, and then now to convert that, because now those actually don't work. Till you get into the pros and you say, I need help.
That lends to how coachable you are. For me, I had to be super coachable. Why? Because I was a fat tight end playing tackle.
And you got away with it.
I got my scholarship to school catching the rock, man. I was scoring touchdowns. Then all of a sudden, I show up to camp at 280 pounds, and that offensive line coach is rubbing his hands together like, yes, big boy, bring that pimply butt on down here to me. So next thing you know, I'm All-American at tackle. That wasn't my play design, but how did I get there? I had good coaching. Guys that put me in the right position taught me the right technique, and it adjusted as I went. I had Bob Young as a rookie coach. I had Larry Bechtel. I had Rennie Simmons. I had all these guys, and guess who the coach was right behind them that I had the most conversation with? A dude wearing the gold jacket named Mike Munchak. He was my coach my entire career. And I played alongside another guy that taught me just about as much of the game as Mike did, another gold jacket wearer named Bruce Matthews. So I was inundated with good coaching about technique, because that's what it comes down to, building the structure of a good offensive lineman and a good offensive line.
It's good points there you made. Not only did you have the talent, but then you were coachable.
That's what it's about. I'm telling you.
Listen to the veteran guys. I mean, a lot of guys, I don't know how much they do that still today.
Right.
You'd
be shocked at how much. I mean, to me, the most effective offensive line coaches are the guys that play offensive line. I'm not saying you got to play at the pro level to do that, but a guy that's put his hand in the dirt, the guy that understands spacing because he's blocked somebody, a guy that understands working with other people, communicating, all that stuff, versus I was the defensive end for a D2 school back in whatever years ago. Now I'm coaching offensive line. Okay,
And it's weird because
you can know football, but
Bill
come
Callahan
on, man.
didn't play offensive line. However, he's dedicated a big part of
30
his career
years or
to
something
it.
like that would do it.
Put a lot of work into it.
Right.
And
he's got his own, sleds.
Exactly, he does. Bertha and
He's got
Olga.
that thing. He's got that thing patent. Is he selling that to other teams?
Yeah, I think so. That's
Absolutely.
what
Are you serious?
I have never seen so
I
many
don't know.
tools out there in the offensive line area ever since I've been here.
Well, it's the first time I ever walked over there and started watching what they do.
See, that's terrible.
And it's actually
That shows
enjoyable.
the impact that he's kind of had here.
Right.
Because you want to see great coaching and see what they do to get to that level. And I'm sure they had to go through a maturation process to get there.
Yeah.
But you like, dang, this is a finished product now. Let's see what it looks like. And it's undervalued offensive line coaching across the country. And I'm talking about not just in college, but even in the pro level, because I think there's so many things that you need to know. And sometimes you have to experience it, whether you're a coach or a former player that's doing that. So, man, it's really interesting and fascinating at this point, especially since the Titans have had issues with offensive line over the last 2 or 3, 4 years.
That's it right there. It was a problem, so it's been addressed, and that's why we're talking about it.
Exactly,
so much.
and it does feel different, and you're hearing it from the guys themselves. You're listening to the Lee Company countdown to kickoff as the Titans are in New Orleans today. 1 p.m. kickoff for that. Lee Company, all you need. You can visit them online at leecompany.com. When we return, we will address the tackle issue on the offensive line. Do you feel like there's enough depth there right now? Could they possibly go out and get somebody in a couple of weeks? We'll discuss that. Plus, there's been some kicker questions in the chat. We'll get to that. That's coming up next here on 104.5 The Zone.
Ooh.
Welcome back to the Lee Company countdown to kickoff. The Titans trust their home stadium to Lee Company to tackle their HVAC, plumbing, and electrical problems. They can protect your home too. Your next play, visit leecompany.com. Lee Company, all you need. The gang is here. Of course, Buck Reising joined us earlier from New Orleans as he gets ready to cover the game there. 1 p.m. kickoff. We're taking you up to Titans Radio at noon. It's been fun so far, guys. I am going to bring up a concern for some people right now at the tackle position and just the depth. So I know when you look at the depth chart, we've seen some familiar guys in Jalen Duncan, who's been here for a couple years at that right tackle spot. We've seen him work a little bit at the left spot. John Ojukwu, who started off in OTAs and mandatory mini camp as being a guy that was taking reps with ones. But once the pads came on, you didn't see as much as you wanted to out of him. I think the guy I look at the most in terms of a depth piece that could make this roster is Jerron Christian, and he's the guy that has connection to Bill Callahan. Are you guys concerned at all with the tackle depth?
I've been on rosters, Blaine, that had 8 offensive linemen. And that stinks because there's only 3 dudes to run practice squad, and that means 2 starters get to play practice squad. And usually it's the younger guys like myself that had to do double duty, right? Yeah. Sucks being a starter and working for special teams. So all I want on the roster are at least 10 offensive linemen, so 5 dudes can do practice squad, okay? It's going to do practice squad.
Wow.
Right. 5 starters, and then everybody has a backup, okay? Because, see, after that, it's kind of irrelevant. Like we mentioned earlier, that unit of 5, unless something catastrophic happens like an injury, I expect every one of them to play every snap that's available for the offense. Now, and there's rare occasions that something does happen and the guy's not durable, one of these guys has to be able to step up, right? Mm-hmm. But he's not going to be a quality dude like a starter regardless. Mm-hmm. So let's work with the guys that are most familiar with the system, right, that have a good rapport with even the guys that I'm working with versus trying to find somebody on the street.
Okay.
Now, listen. We know how teams work. They're constantly scanning the waiver wire or the practice squad for somebody that might be impactful, that might be just a pinch better than the one they got. And those guys are more expendable. For the most part, though, I think just making sure that everyone understands the system that we're trying to run. And if I do need you and break the glass and get the extinguisher or whatever, that's the role that you're going to play. Other than that, all I need you to do is hold the clipboard.
Okay. So you're comfortable with, some of these guys like Jalen Duncan maybe that we hadn't seen as much as we'd like to at this point. Granted, I think he was like a 6th-round pick.
Now, let's look at the severity of the situation.
You said 10 guys, he's not part of the 10. OJ be the backup tackle as well as Christian.
Yeah, because John Ojukwu's in front of
I'm not saying he was in or out. I'm just saying I just want 10 linemen.
That's what she just asked, though.
She asked what? If Jalen's the guy, if he's...
Is he more so than John Ojukwu?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That is really hard.
I know.
Jalen was I know Jalen.
First of all, I would have went with 9. I'm going to tell you my reason, guys. I want a guy play guard and center to save me a little spot.
Okay.
I may need that spot for some else. Reason why I say that is because of the kickoff rule. I need more movement guy. And so I would prefer have one guy there, and I have Brunskill who can play actually guard and tackle.
He can, because the dude has a side.
I don't have a person for every position. So that's something to that. If I'm trying to look for a spot, that last little spot.
There's not that much of a difference between Jalen Duncan or Ojukwu, because if you think about it.
With their legs.
Yes. That is so true.
How they look is what I remember.
Did I tell you guys?
Jalen's a big, tall dude, though. He doesn't have the range, I don't think, that John does.
Did I tell you guys in college?
OJ had some toothpick calves.
Yeah.
They had to, at Boise State, he had to drink a gallon of milk a day to keep weight. This is not a joke. I have a buddy that covered him at Boise State. He had to drink a gallon of milk a day to keep weight on.
I'm lactose intolerant. That would have killed me.
That would have destroyed me.
I said, I'm out.
Whoa, how much does he weigh?
I know that's right.
You're right, though.
With just that
You're right,
alone.
Blaine. The legs.
6'5", 309. Either way. Yeah. But that's all I'm saying. So, of course, listen, if there's a dude that I feel that, there are some aging dudes like David Bakhtiari or whatever else, but determining on how bad the injury is. In other words, if a guy's going to be out because he's got a soft tissue injury and it's a game, I'm going to ride out with Jalen or Christian or one of these guys that I have on the roster. Because I'm only just I'll cover you up for a game. But if it's something that's more catastrophic, let's just say season ending or 6 weeks, now I might have to look at who's available free agency, and they're going to be longer in the tooth, right? Because anybody worth getting at that point that's been sitting at home at least better know some football. Mm-hmm. So he's probably over 30 with at least some experience and can be a rental until they sort things out.
You think a couple of these guys, like I'm looking at Cole Spencer as well as the Simmons kid, he impressed me. I didn't even know he went to TSU.
Pig, man, that's my guy.
I'm like, man, these guys may be potential, at worst case scenario, practice squad players.
For sure.
Then that helps you with what you're talking about. Everybody has a spot, then you're not doing double duty. Got, what is it? How many people on the practice squad? 15 or so?
Is it 16 now?
16 now? Okay, yeah. So they keep
Latavius Simmons, I coached down at Boost.
Yeah,
he's a big dude.
He is a big dude, but first off, he's athletic.
He's kind of athletic. I watched him the last two. I was like, man, this guy. I think more people need to be talking about him.
Blaine, you know why you like him?
What's that?
Because he loves football.
Yeah.
Oh,
He watches offensive line film on YouTube. That stuff. He's the guy that wants to constantly get better. He constantly checks in with me when he's like,
I can work with that.
I'm here getting better, B-Hop. That's all. I'm just getting better.
TSU guy, right? Yeah.
TSU, right down the street.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was like, whoa, this guy.
I think Coach Reed had a hold of him.
He's pretty good, Paul.
I know. I've had times on the sideline where people would be like, wait, who is that? I said, oh, that was Simmons.
Yeah.
That's Pig,
Simmons.
a.k.a. Pig, man. That's the dude.
And you also got the Leroy Watson, gentleman.
Yes.
Who's a vet guy.
Cousin of Randy Watson. No, I'm just kidding. No,
so what do you see out of him and Christian as just far as their technique and why they haven't got over the snide of being starters? What is the issue?
Young guys tend to play too high sometimes. Also, I've noticed that Jaron's a guy that tends to give his hands quick.
Oh, he's showing.
See,
you got a flash.
It takes a lot of confidence to just, remember that commercial for when they're trying to sell a car on Carvana or something? She kept saying, hold now. And then she says to sell it, right? Yeah. See, that's what offensive linemen have to do. You got to hold them hands, and then bam, you shoot them right in the moment to be able to have an effective block. But if I got my hands out here already, that's what the defensive line wants me to do. They want me to give you my hands so that way I can do a rip, knock them down, do all kinds of stuff.
So
grab
his
your
hands
shoulder.
Are too quick. Like, he's got him up too quick.
But you know what? That's the tendency of most young players.
Sure.
Patience,
but it takes you a little bit of time, seeing the reps, seeing the rush clearly, to then just play at a level. And that's what I would expect from a guy like that. But Jaron's got a little more experience than most coming in from Cleveland. But he understands, of course, being coached by Bill Callahan, exactly the nuances of what Bill would like to have. I don't know if. I'm sure that Bill had all that cool equipment, those cool toys up there in their office line stuff, so he's used to working with it. But at this point, you've got to wonder, well, why isn't he not a starter? Yep. Maybe the investment that we've had in a first-round pick like JC is keeping him on the sideline. Other than that, maybe he would be in the lineup. We don't know.
You're listening to the League Company countdown to kickoff. League Company, all you need, you can visit them online at leaguecompany.com. So, guys, we had some questions about the kicker position in the chat, and Kent said, I have a question. He said, Carlson and Joseph in a kicker battle in Green Bay. And he said, if they go with youth and a cheap contract, should the Titans consider Joseph, who is just 30 years old, over Folk, who is 40? So here's the thing, too. If anything, I think people have brought up the kicker battle that is right here.
His name is Narveson, right?
Uh-huh. And Braden. So he was talking about Joseph, who's up in Green Bay. Should they bring in him? No. I say, well, if anything, if they're trying to consider a younger guy, they'd probably consider a guy they have right here at camp in Braden Narveson, who clearly last weekend made a 59-yarder and then hit the game-winning field goal, which puts you in a good spot. Here are the kicking stats for camp and the field goals made, courtesy of Jim Wyatt. Nick Folk, 31 of 33 at 93.9%. Braden Narveson, the rookie, 21 of 28 at 75%. So I think the thing that I've got in terms of feedback here, guys, when I've asked coaches and other media people about this is they feel pretty confident in the 40-year-old Nick Folk right now just because of the body of work that he's provided. When you look at Braden Narveson, he did some good things in that preseason game, and he might do it today again. But in camp, he's been a little inconsistent, especially with those short field goals. He has a boot on him that he can kick those long ones. So from what I've heard, guys, they're going to stick with the 40-year-old Folk. But do you think at this point, just go with the younger guy since they've kind of held on to more of these veteran kickers as of late?
What difference does it make at kicker, man? I want the guy that's been seasoned and understand those moments.
Right.
I mean, we had Morton Anderson or some old dudes. They're in their 40s. As a matter of fact, that seems like that's when you have the most consistent swing. Yeah. And that's all. It's
They're worried
pendulum
about
style
the
stuff.
distance with folk when it comes
I
to
get it.
it.
You have the foot to do it.
Yeah.
And we see dudes nowadays, right, that are blasting 55, 60 yards. Right.
In Dallas.
It was 66 yards in the half, right?
That's incredible.
Unbelievable.
That is incredible, man. These kickers, man, the talent level is
Remember
just
Elam from Broncos?
Jason Elam. Mm-hmm.
He set the record.
Yeah.
He came in with Blaine and I in '93.
Yeah.
And that was something to be held back then. But now you got these dudes. I can understand that. But when it comes to consistency, I just want to know how many times you can hit that chip shot and put points on the board.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. Naturally you did a one-year deal with Nick Folk, so, and you gave him a little bit of cheddar there at the end here. And he's, 50 and in, he's pretty much automatic. So I will lean towards that for sure. But what I would do is, because you just never know with these kickers, I would bring him back on the practice squad. He may get picked up somewhere else, but there has to be an injury to a guy. Most kickers are already set on most teams.
Yep.
So you can take the risk and roll the dice, continue to develop them. All you need is one more year. And then, I don't know, maybe something happens. You need to elevate him at some point. You hope it doesn't happen that way. But he definitely shows some promise, especially with, the way, if you can kick from far now. If you're 60 and in now, that changed the whole perspective as a coach. So at some point, you may be able to tone the pace, but hopefully you can buy yourself one more time. I was up here trying to be up all week, Kayla. I was trying to find a way to sneak him through and say your hammy is hurt and put him on like that temporary IR.
Right?
Your hammy, your calf tight now, right? Yeah, I see you got the wrap on there, or is that your sock? So that's what I would be trying to do. I don't know if they even could still do those things. I think they have different forms of IR where you're out, 4 weeks. It'd be interesting to see what they do with Cedric Gray, maybe potentially.
I was looking at that too, yeah.
So I don't know, but I'm leaning towards Nick Folk for sure. There's no question. 31 to 33 in practice. He hasn't faltered any at this point in time, and I know what I get. Yeah.
I'm with you guys on that. And I was bringing up that point earlier too, Blaine. I think you could probably sneak him on the practice squad. Again, the body of work is just not out there yet, where they're going to probably pick some of these other guys. And you're talking about a battle in Green Bay. Well, there's one that's going to be available for somebody else if they need him.
Yeah, unless somebody has some terrible situation going on where they're actually looking on people's roster for a guy like that, it'd be easier to hide.
Yeah. We spoke about earlier, you guys, I just wanted to bring it up one more time. Ryan Stonehouse is expected to play today. Buck kind of touched on this earlier on the show, but he had been out since December when he got hurt against the Colts. So he's been through a process. It's been a heck of a journey, but he has been in practice, but not played in a game yet. And we're going to see him a little bit today. So I think that's going to be exciting just because he can be such a weapon for this team flipping the field. We saw it. I mean, that can be just a game changer in certain situations.
We were spoiled, man. We had Reggie Roby, Craig Hendrick. Guys that if we got in the pinch, and Brett Kern,
some legendary punters here, man.
Yeah, so the thing is, the ability to flip the field, like you mentioned, is huge. Gives the defense some good footing, allows them to do some things from a package standpoint to get the ball back. And then you're not dealing with such a terrible situation once you do get it back. If you have a punter that can effectively pin that offense, at the other end of the field, that's a luxury to have nowadays.
Yeah, I'll be watching closely just to see if he still has the confidence to do the things he normally does. And when you have an injury like that of a significance, you're always worried about that first time. Can I do? There's always going to be a doubt until you do it.
You're right.
Can I do it again? I mean, and then he's a kicker. I mean, it was his leg. I mean, he's just playing.
He didn't see that coming, neither, right?
Yeah, it was horrific for me. I was like, oh my gosh, that was bad. That was real bad. So I'm excited for him. At the same time, I'm sure he's going to be a little nervous, almost like he's a rookie again, and go out there and see if he has it. And he's in the dome, so that plays a little bit to his powerful leg that he has, because he has a rocket launcher. So we'll see if he can get to peak performance quickly or it's really close. So I'll be excited to watch him for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to that, guys. So let's talk about some of the guys that are trying to vie for some of the bottom spots of this roster. And you brought up in the Blake to run the break that Teron Davenport had tweeted out that Caleb Farley is expected to play. And we know that he had some issues with a hammy about a week ago. He was back at practice last week, but we didn't see a ton of him. we surprised he's playing today, or this is kind of a farewell kind of thing for him? Because I don't know if there's a spot for him. And
yeah, I don't know either. I have to say this. Someone who has gone through what he's gone through, not only on the personal side, but also on the football side of it with the injuries and everything else, being the pick that he was. I actually like what I saw in camp before the little hammy snafu here. And then once again, as a coach, and you looking at it from the Titans' perspective, you go, here we go. This is probably the last straw. So I'm happy that I thought he could be potentially a depth piece on the team, what I was seeing in camp. I hadn't seen before, and then the little hammy. So he's back out there. So hopefully he shows enough. If he's not on the Titans as a depth piece, he can be good enough, without the history. They won't know. All they'll see is what they see on the field and say, hey, he looks like I see what I saw years ago when we first drafted, the team drafted him in the first round, that he can potentially be a depth piece. You never know where people, look at him and still value him and what he can do. And so hopefully he does really well. But unfortunately, I just think that's probably not going to be here.
Do you think that there's some similarities between, say, a Caleb Farley and a Jamal Adams, Blaine, in the way that they play the game with a level of physicality, aggression, just that gear's the only one they know, and there's no way they can dial it back of sorts to play the game safer. So they're almost their own worst enemy.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, let's start with the cornerback aggression and then safety aggression is two totally different deals to me, being that I played both. I mean, I could say I was a physical corner, but when I moved to safety, it had to go to a whole nother notch for me to survive. So I think his injuries are something that are very similar, and that he just had it repeated over and over. So, man, part of me is like, dang, this guy keeps coming back. His mental fortitude, and I think his strength and his faith has really helped him a lot.
Yeah.
And I am a fan of people like that, to overcome and win. That something at some point in time has to go well for him. And to even have the wherewithal to even survive all of this and not even just quit, to be honest. So I want him to do well, and I was really thought he was promising. And he did show, to your point, some physicality in camp. I saw him hit a offensive lineman on a pull after he messed up on a cover 3 deal where he's supposed to stay outside and let the guy catch an out route. He came up, bang, and hit the guard on a pull on a run. And boy,
didn't even think about it, did he?
Didn't. And so he does have some physicality, to your point, and he wasn't afraid to do it, by the way, after all these injuries, 2 back surgeries, 2 knee surgeries. So I'm excited to watch him. So him and Stonehouse, I'm going to be really honing in on these guys, whether they're on this team or not. We know Stonehouse is going to be on here. So just see if he's up to form.
Yeah.
He hadn't played all preseason.
Yeah, I always wish him the best, man. I always enjoyed that kid. He's always had a positive attitude. I don't know. Your faith in God, absolutely. And just he's had teammates that have surrounded him, I know, in that locker room that have been through all of that and there for him. So,
well, if he still thinks he has something left in the tank to play, there are 31 other teams that he's auditioning for also.
No
absolutely.
doubt.
You guys, so Ryan Callahan said 4 to 6 roster spots on this team right now. He's thinking that, at the bottom. So they're up for grabs. And we know there are some positions now that we're like, okay, do they keep possibly 4 running backs and keeping a guy like Hassan Haskins and Julius Chestnut, both who kind of give different value to the team? Hassan more in the special teams game, right? Which they've pumped that up. Or do you look at the tight ends room? And I know historically when you look at a Bengals offense, you're not keeping 4, but then you got David Martin Robinson, who has been a big time stand out in camp, not only in practice, but he's showing up in games, guys.
Yeah.
Who are you?
That was my
putting,
crush.
Right?
That was my camp crush.
He's great. Who are you putting in these last 4 to 6 spots?
And that stinks because he was playing well. I mean, so I'm not saying he doesn't have a spot at some point, but being on IR to end camp is never really a good situation to be in. But I watched the guys like him. I watched guys like Mason Kinsey, who's been around here for a minute, you know what I mean, on here and there, had chances. And
he's playing with a broken pinky right now. He's out practice catching balls.
Playing receiver, oh my.
He could play. He could be in the team's games too as a returner, that kind of stuff. So he can bring some value there. I just thought that in some instances this preseason he's been clutch. I want to see one or two, if not both, of the Jackson boys. Kieris or Jaquan. Is there a role, especially with this new rules that we've seen in the return game? And some advantages we've seen them take full advantage of. If I can say advantage one more time, I'll get that in there. But just the point that these kids are, right now trying to fight for a spot, and with their ability and what we've seen through these few weeks, it might have afforded them just that opportunity.
Ooh, this is going to be a close one. Man,
No, I'm curious what you think.
Me too,
right?
man. Well, I really don't know. I mean, man, I'm looking at the roster and some back-end guys, and I really like Chestnut over Hassan Haskins.
Okay.
I kind of value him at running back a little bit more than Haskins, probably a better special teamers than him. Special teams is a 1-2. I think Chestnut, being that his background, he came from Sacred Heart, and him looking better than a Michigan running back, I would say he's better.
Yep.
In preseason, Haskins looks a little rusty when he gets the ball. He stumbled over his feet. He should have hit the hole. He should have got a first down on one of them. Yeah, it's just so I like Chestnut there. They keep 4. Yeah, Haskins is great. Got 2 power backs. But I am really interested in Nick Vernett, the veteran guy. Now, would you change out him? See, you thought I was going to say like him. Him for the guy that C.J. Ozuma, who got cut by the Jets, who played with the Bengals first.
Who lives here, by the way.
Yes, he does.
He does live here.
That's why you threw that out there, because he lives down the street.
First of all, don't ask me because I'm a big fan of his personality. He's hilarious.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Somebody who knows the system and scheme. Vernett is kind of he's been injured in a training camp, but he hasn't shown all that. Like, oh man, we got to keep him.
Yeah,
right.
So,
He's
tight end is going to be the X factor
he's
too.
He's more of the blocker, right? That's kind of what he's there for. The veteran blocker.
Went out.
Right.
Chig is more of you can be slot guy, you can be more athletic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you're listening to the Lead Company Countdown to Kickoff. We are brought to you by Lead Company. Lead Company, all you need, of course, visit them online at leadcompany.com. We are on our way out, but guess what? Titans Radio on their way in, guys, and then kickoff at 1 p.m. between the Titans and the Saints. But for now, in studio, Kalya Anderson, Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins, and we say, Tighten up!